Hello, everyone. This is another episode of Fire, Breathe, and Rob. Please like and subscribe and also share these videos on YouTube. With that said, I have somebody that I'm really fond of, and I'm really, as a basketball fan and as a Gator fan in general, I was huge on this guy. I told him before the interview, I remember in high school, we used to, write out our brackets, and me being a Gators guy, I always picked the Gators to go far, and him, being such an amazing player, passing the ball, shooting the ball, even rebounding at his size. I mean, he did phenomenal things on the court. And I'd love to introduce everybody to Teddy Dupay, former basketball player for the Florida Gators. And in high school, and we're going to get into this, and I want to talk about this, he scored 3,744 points at Cape Coral's Mariner High School. So, Teddy, thanks so much for coming on. Greatly appreciate this.
You bet. Thanks for the invite.
So, Teddy, let's talk about this. When did you start playing basketball, and why did you want to play basketball?
I've played basketball my whole life. Growing up, I played all sports. God blessed me with an awful lot of athletic ability, and I'm passionate to play sports. And more than that, I love competition. I love when there's a winner and a loser. And to me, that's just a really important part of sports, but life as well. So I think that's what drew me to it. In terms of playing basketball, it's funny, I'm 40 now, so it's been quite a long time, but there are still, no sound videos of me as a kid, and you had to pull out the projector to run them. You had to have movie night. You couldn't just watch movies. But it's funny, that's kind of how my parents taught me to walk. They'd put a little basketball out in a garbage can and set it away from me, and I'd try and go over and get it. And then my dad would move the can and the ball right when I'd get there, and I'd fall on my face, and he would laugh like crazy. And you could see my mom, "Oh, Eddie, what are you doing? Oh, stop, let him get it." But that was a pretty consistent bicker. The guy was so great. He never let me win, ever. I earned it when I finally did it. And she was just so great. Tougher than him, no doubt about it. But just an incredible mom. I got great parents, so I was given a lot of help along the way.
Right. So I want to jump into your high school career, and we just kind of discussed it a little bit with how many points you scored. But let's talk about this. With such an amazing player that had such a great high school career, as a freshman, you started off scoring 20 points a game. By the senior year, you were scoring 40 points a game. How did you become such an amazing player, scoring that many points in a high school game? 40 points a game, that's incredible. But even 20 at a freshman, as somebody that's like 13, 14 years old, that's incredible.
Thanks, man. No, a lot of it was our system. We played real fast. We had a coach that wanted to score very, very fast. I had a lot of good players around me. I also moved into a situation with a team that was loaded with Division I players. They were good the year before, not great, but the point guard graduated. So it was one of those situations where the point guard was a senior, but all the other players were something else. But it was guys that really couldn't do it on their own. You had one slasher, a couple really great shooters, a couple really good big guys, especially for high school. But they needed somebody to get the ball popping around. And for me, I moved right into that situation where I could start right away, and I earned it. There were other kids there, but I was better than them. I also got real lucky, I guess you could say lucky. When I was sixth grade, I was always a little guy. I'm a little guy now, but boom, all of a sudden I went into sixth grade, 4'10". I came out of sixth grade, 5'9", 5'10", and it all happened right away. So with that spurt, I also kind of turned into a man, physically, where I could start to lift weights and see some results. So I could move and jump faster. I was just naturally a little bit, stronger, man strength. And so then I even had a couple years to learn my body like that. Now, I thought I was going to be real tall. That's kind of when when I'm in the middle of the back row of the school pictures, my mom's like, "Oh, honey, no, you're not." And I just thought I'd will myself to 6'4". I didn't. So I never grew another millimeter except in the program. We did that a couple times. But so that was nice. So when I went in, you're a freshman, sure, you're a young guy, but from a physical standpoint, I was able to compete on that level. And so the natural reaction, which has always been the case, whether I was in college and professionals or even in high school, somebody tries to guard you. First they underestimate you, then they try and guard you, and then the whole idea is they're going to try and beat you up, and more so then than now. And I was able to physically withstand that beating, at least for the most part. I mean, I had injuries there in college and stuff, and that just comes from climbing the ranks, playing against, the guys at that size are a lot bigger than people realize. You watch them on TV, or there's, the 6'6" guy at the Y. I mean, it's nothing. The people are so big, they're so good, they're so athletic, and not backing down, it wore my body down. But I feel great now. It's amazing. I feel better now, and I move faster, play better at 40 than I did at 20 because I was just so beat down. But yeah, that was a big break for me. Growing early, good system, good teammates around me, so people couldn't lock down. But I also practiced and played like I had a real, some sort of a weird mental disability. The amount of time I put in, it was odd, and it paid off.
Did you change your workouts now to stay in such great shape and get rid of all that pain and fatigue that you were suffering from?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't lift weights anymore. I get rid of that. Just the unnatural body movements to build strength and to look good. I use a lot of bands, a lot of isometrics. I do yoga, at least 3-4 times a week. It's been harder now lately. Still do it at my house. Still stretch a lot, but I really have found that the breathing, it helps a lot. And mentally, it helps you with a good, healthy lifestyle. I think a lot of that plays into it well. Sleeping on a consistent basis, not going out, not partying, not burning the candle at both ends, having a good diet, and I cook my own food. I enjoy eating healthy. It's not where I'm really making a sacrifice. I don't really like sweets. That matters. And a lot of it has to do with my weight. At the time, again, years ago, maybe people remember, maybe they don't. The game was much, much more physical by design.
Yes.
Now the game is wide open. So a skinny guy like Steph Curry or a skinny young guy like Trae Young can get up and down and flow through the court. You're not allowed to touch him. James Harden, for instance, all those free throws he's taking. The game's not as physical. They're cleaning it up. When I was playing, it wasn't that way. Every team still had enforcers and bruisers, and guys were on the team for one reason, to bring pain. So in college, I played at about 185, 190. And then when I came back after, I was about that weight, 190, when I first started playing in the pros, doing real well. When I came back, I tried to put on more strength after my first knee injury. And so I got up to about 200, 205 pounds. So I was a tank, and, I could really move. I was just fine. Probably could have played some sort of a strong safety, really, to be honest with you. But, or left field or something like that. But with my body frame, some guys can carry that, some guys really can't. With my body frame, that even took a toll. And I think after a few injuries, what you take for granted is not that you can't go out there and perform and play. Like right now, I feel like I could probably go play one day and do just fine. I could play in these Pro-Am leagues and, still the best player on the court, no matter who's out there. But the next day when those young guys are playing again, I got ice on my knees, I got ice on my back, I can barely get out of bed, even my toe muscles hurt, right? And that's where people don't understand the professional game, what it really takes to be able to go out there and have to compete on such a high level day in and day out, and the amount of training, the amount of stress and just basically torture you have to put on your body to get into that kind of condition to compete like that day in and day out against the best. And for me, with my game being, below the rim, precision, shooting, tough shots a lot of times, and a lot of defensive attention on me, if I was a hair off with my timing, it could actually look pretty bad. It was pretty gruesome. And I think after time that started to wear me down a little bit mentally as well. And when I wasn't able to train the way I needed to, I wasn't able to go out there and still dominate against bigger people. And then I sort of lost that edge, where you feel like you're invincible. And everybody knows the mindset's the most important thing. And once you lose that, it's time to move on and do something different.
You look at the NBA in college also, you look at the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, I would say, and it was very physical, a big man's game. Now we see a lot of the three-point shot, and you were a tremendous shooter in your day and playing with the Gators and even playing in the pros in Venezuela. But with that being said, do you believe that this has hurt the game, that we depend more on threes and it's not that physical a game anymore?
Well, I don't know if it's hurt the game. The game has changed. People see a lot of threes. Well, why is that? Sure, there's a couple guys who shoot threes off the dribble, but not really. James Harden, Trae Young, Steph Curry. But even those guys don't shoot a high percentage off the dribble, the dribble shot. The catch and shoot three isn't a very hard shot. Any shot, catch and shoot. And the numbers show that. Every level, NBA all the way down to YMCA. When a player catches the ball and shoots without dribbling, they're shooting 70%, no matter what the shot is. You take one dribble, it cuts in half below 50. You take two dribbles, it cuts in down in the teens. So when you're dribbling and shooting. So there's a new rule, with the defense of 3 seconds, which keeps everybody out of the lane, which makes driving lanes easier. And when somebody drives, two people have to guard them, and now you're kicking to open players, right? I think because of that in the NBA, you see a lot of threes, but what you're really seeing is a lot of spacing. But another thing, the 3-point shot, one of the reasons we shot it so much is it's worth 50% more than a 2-pointer, but it's not 50% harder. So really, when you think about it, it's a great strategy to have, especially when you have somebody like, whoever that can get in the lane, they can create points in the paint. They can get into the lane. You're just not getting into the paint with a post feed. You're getting there with a drive. But at the end of the day, the game is still a big man's game. There's some experiments happening right now. We'll see how it all works out. You never know. But I don't think it's hurt the game at all. I think what's hurt the game more is poorly skilled players. I think poorly skilled players, poorly developed players. I think the branding of the league has been one that I think they're kind of missing the boat. I think they're sort of missing the boat. They go out there and they have these guys, they make them to seem like they're bigger than God. They're paying guys all this money. Some guys making $50 million a year to not play.
They're on the bench. Yeah.
Where's the incentive to continue to get better? Where's the incentive to carry yourself like a role model? Do we really want every single kid? Because let's keep in mind, if there's 100 million kids that want to be in the NBA, 99.9999999% of them are not going to be in the NBA. But this is where they're taking their leadership from, and going and taking a couple of occasional photo shoots where they're handing out, balloons at a kid's hospital. Nobody's buying that. There's a photo shoot with the internet. You got to go out there and really do stuff. And I think they've done a poor job as an NBA, as a league, and helping these guys build their foundations. Typically, the foundations and the charity work they do, it's really just a way to reward their boys or their family for being with them all the way, which is just fine by me. Better than buying everybody Cadillacs, right? So you got to give them a job doing something. They run the foundation. People think running a foundation is easy, something you just do. It's not. The NBA could have interns, they could have staff, all this money that everybody's making that they're just giving away to players. They could be dumping that in, and not dumping it, but I'm talking about pouring it in to building real infrastructure and real teams and real management, so that every single one of these professional athletes had a real charity that branded them the right way. It reached out to everybody. With social media, you don't have to show everything to everybody. With social media, you can distribute and disseminate what you want to who you want to. So if you want to market to your customers, you want to, motivate to some people, you want to create unity to other people, but instead you get the opposite. You get people turned off because they're seeing marketing they don't want. You see people, with LeBron's charities and stuff like that. You have a lot of people saying, why is he helping these kids? Why is he only helping those kids? Everybody roots for him. Everybody buys his stuff. Everybody buys his tickets. How come he's only helping that? So even the good stuff they do, the way social media is set up now, it creates dissension. And so I find that a little disappointing. I feel like they're playing right into it instead of doing something as a leader, something positive about it. But what do I know? I'm just a little basketball coach, right?
I just want you to talk about the recruiting process to Florida.
Yep, sure. So, yeah, that's a unique situation. So I like I said, I grew early. I had success early. We also played in the City of Palms and some other tournaments early on. So I was on the scene. And I got rated pretty highly. And then when I went to these big camps and tournaments, I did really well. So everybody knew right away I wasn't just another little white kid. I was here to play, and I was for real. And so that made me stand out. Everybody was watching every time, hoping to do good, hoping to do bad, but I had eyes on me. And so because of that, I started to earn a lot of respect from a lot of players. I always thought I would just go to Duke. It's just what I wanted to do. And then, I knew Billy, my coach in high school. My first one was friends with him up in Long Island. And then my second coach, which I'll explain in a second, was actually Billy Donovan's high school coach, Frank Morris at St. Agnes. But Tim knew him. And when he was at Marshall, Billy was at Marshall. One time I even said hello to him. Tim Maloney says hi. He was a 5-star. He's, oh, that's great, But then when he got the job at Florida, I didn't like the Gators really that much then, but I kind of had a hunch, one of those feelings, and I get those sometimes, like a lot of people do. But I was like, man, I'm going to end up going to Florida. And I'm telling you, the very next day we're there and talking, and he said, I want you to be our point guard at Florida. I know you're a sophomore, but I'd like you to commit early. I'd like you to, it's just a verbal commitment, but commit to us. And that way we'll be the first person in the class. You create some media. It'll show that we're here for real. But I think at that point, some guys that would never even consider Florida as a basketball school would now consider it and let us recruit them. And if we recruit them, we can get them. And I would help recruit them. But he didn't tell me that. But that's what ended up happening. Because the reason I think Billy Donovan got the job, to be perfectly honest with you, I think the straw that broke the camel's back was just before me. Vince Carter was the best player in Florida. They didn't get Vince. Vince left. Vince went to North Carolina. And I think they were like, this is ridiculous. We got to stop letting really great players from Florida get out of Florida. In football, we're the best because we keep talent at home. In basketball, we haven't been doing that. Don't even consider it. So I think that's why Billy got the job. He came right to me, and to me that made a little bit of sense. Obviously, we didn't know what Florida would turn into. I mean, we knew. At least we thought we knew. But he's like, if you come to Florida, you'll be the first guy, and you'll be remembered by this university forever for being the very first guy that started this Florida basketball tradition. And as it turns out, that's what happened. And I still have Florida fans all the time tell me. I mean, they tell me stories that I've forgotten. So they're really grateful and thankful. And for what that's worth, you know, it does mean something that the decision we made and the foresight that we had, it came to fruition. And so that gives you confidence. But outside of that, it just made a whole lot of sense. So, you know, Brent Wright and Major Parker committed after that. They were in a class ahead of me, but I committed before them. And then our recruiting class was tremendous, and the class after us was tremendous. So we had a ton of talent, which at the end of the day, good talent makes good coaches. You know, that's why we were successful.
How was Billy as a coach, you know, during the games, during practices? Can you give us a little bit of insight on that?
Yeah. I'm sure Billy was very different then like he is now. Keep in mind, he was 30 years old. So it's tough for me to put that in perspective. Somebody 10 years younger than me was in charge of a program like that. And we all grow. We all mature. I can't imagine how difficult it was to coach me. You know, at that time, I just, you know, my approach to people, my approach to what I was trying to do, I was very self-centered. The only thing that mattered was me. And at the time when you're playing a sport and trying to achieve something like that, that kind of serves you well and maybe gives you the wrong idea of what makes you a successful human being. Obviously, thank God I've grown from that. But for him to be able to deal with those types of egos, and then even somebody like myself who, you know, I went out and recruited these guys, and these were my boys, you know, and they were closer to me and they looked to me for leadership. And so at times I think there was probably even a little bit of a little pissing match between us about, you know, who was in charge. But he was clearly in charge, you know, but I didn't, you know, but I was the leader. But when push came to shove, we wanted the same thing. We were on the same mission. We never veered from that. You know, the competitive nature, you know, the amount we played in the off season when they weren't allowed to touch us or talk to us and stuff like that. Brent Wright as well. All of our guys were great leaders, but we always had our guys in the gym. There wasn't a day that went by we didn't play basketball. And I hear about some of these schools now. You know, I asked one of the coaches the other day, I wanted to come and play, and this is, you know, a while ago. And I said, I want to come up and play with the kids and, you know, college kids. And I was like, when are they playing? I'm not sure. They play like once a week in the off season. I'm thinking to myself, no wonder nobody can shoot, you know. No wonder nobody's skilled. No wonder these guys look like they're out of sync. They never play together, you know, but that's something that, you know, they say on terrible teams, there's no leadership. Terrible teams, there's no leadership. Then they make a change with the coach. On good teams, on really good teams, you have great coaches, and the coaches provide the leadership. But on the really great teams, the ones that you remember, the ones that win championships, you know, the ones that we're still telling stories about, the players provide the leadership. And I think that's what made us unique and lucky is we had great coaches, young coaches, energetic coaches, but we also had great, mature, ready to win, and we knew leadership was a big part of it at a very young age. And so that's what kind of created that perfect storm for us. And I think when you look around the league, all of them, you'll find that coaches are great leaders and great coaches, but all of those teams have somebody in an important position that is a dynamic leader that the people look to and they can follow and encourages other people on the team to be their leader, or at least be their best. So I think that's often an overlooked skill. It's one of the intangibles, but you will not ever find a team that doesn't have player leadership on it. Ever.
So can you speak about that tough loss against Gonzaga and then going all the way to the national championship the next game? Year rather.
Yeah, so that year was great. You know, we came in, Florida had just had 2 losing seasons. You know, Billy was there for 2 years before we got there. Granted, he had to clean house a little bit, but they did not win. And so now all of a sudden I don't want to call it on the hot seat because they knew what he was trying to build. But there were some unhappy people. as alumni and boosters and people that don't know anything about sports but love them will usually do, they'll create some noise. Here we are, just 30-year-old guy. First thing he does is go get this little shrimp white kid out of, Cape Coral, Florida. Well, he doesn't know what he's doing. So there was a lot of pressure on us to win, a lot of pressure. And you could feel it. And we did. But it was an up and down season. We had young players, new players. The college game is different. But then we get to the tournament. We won a game, then we won another game. And then in that Sweet 16, we played well. I think we outplayed them pretty much the whole way through. But, you play great D and you give up a rebound. You play great D and they hit a tough three. You fall asleep on on an assignment, boom, Richie Fromm hits an open three, gets going a little. Down here, we execute, get fouled, miss the free throws, silly turnovers, you name it. You name it. Just about everything went against us. But at the end of the day, we get into overtime. I think it was overtime. Try to forget. And here comes the play. We shoot, we get the stop, and we don't box out. He didn't even tip it clean. He tipped it, he slipped it, it went up, bounced around and went in. So that hurt. That hurt, and it stung. It stung to think that, man, the next round we're going to play UConn, who won it. But our pressing system would have been great against them. Khalid El-Amin was a little out of shape. He was the only ball handler, and he was a terrific player. So his ego would have been through the roof to try and break our press by himself. Would have affected his shooting, would have affected his in-game performance. We felt like we matched up really good with them. Maybe we were looking ahead, stupid young kids, I don't know. But the next year we came back and we remembered that. Man, the attention to detail from day one, about the boxing out, how intense practices were. You just can't even imagine the bloodbath because you had great players. You had the sense of urgency from the year before. We were winning. We were playing for a championship. We were playing for a championship from day one. But also guys were fighting for playing time. I think that year I played 22 minutes a game, and I was one of the tops on the team. That's played 10, 11 guys. 5 McDonald's All-Americans, so nobody really liked that too much, but we did it because we were trying to do something bigger than have big stats. And so then we got to the finals. We had a great run through the tournament, had a great win in the first round, buzzer beater, fought through another one of those games where everything went against us, including foul trouble, you name it. But we squeaked that one out on the same exact last second type of lucky thing, which was great. And we won a big game against Illinois, had 3 pros, top 10 all year. Then we beat Duke. They were hands down number one. I think they had 9 NBA players or something on their team. Stupid. Then we beat Oklahoma State, who was really good. We were better than them. Then we beat North Carolina, but then we ran into Michigan State. And I think they were preseason number 1 in every one of the polls, and they were terrific. Their team was so well put together, great point guard, great leadership, great coaching. And they had a great game plan. I think they let Udonis go all one-on-one. I think he had the second best game in the history of the NCAA championship game. Bill Walton had a better one. UD had the best after that. And they just, ball went inside and they would face guard our perimeter. Basically saying, go ahead and take your 2. We don't think you're going to score 50 or 60. And it took everybody out of the rhythm a little bit. So when we'd start to make runs, we didn't continue them. When we had a chance to regain momentum with an open shot, we didn't get it. So great strategy. Plus they played great. Mateen Cleaves was a tremendous player, but not 3 for 4 from 3-point range. Tremendous. And he had a great game too, but they lost in the Final Four the year before. So all the experience that we gained in those tough losses that really hurt, so did they. And all the tough, hard-nosed type of people we had, they had them too. And so, when you really look at it, they deserved to win. They played better. Maybe they were a better team, but we definitely could have beaten them, and we matched up well with them. But it wasn't our night. It was not our night.
So, Teddy, let's go back to that year. And you spoke about beating Duke and the 9 NBA players. Carlos Boozer was on that team. Mike Dunleavy Jr., Jay Williams, who was the number 1 pick the year after for Chicago, was on that team. In that game, you guys won that game, was 87-78. Can you talk about that? You had a really memorable game about that. So can you go more in depth about that, please? Yeah,
absolutely. And we had a great game. They were tough. But we were really looking forward to playing them because we went up to Cameron our freshman year, and we had set up a home and home knowing that my sophomore year we were going to be very good. And so we had a TV date, home and home with them. The first year we went up there, and they had all those same guys, plus they had Corey Maggette and Elton Brand. I mean, they were unbelievable. Will Avery. I mean, they were really, really good. They were Duke. They've always been Duke. And and they beat us bad. I mean, they beat us bad, dunks, getting texts, slapping the backboard after dunks. And so, we remembered that, and we were really looking forward to playing them. And then they backed out on us. So they didn't come return the favor for the home and home. We ended up playing Rutgers or somebody else instead. And, but just one more thing. So we really, really wanted to play them, and not like, I hope I see them later. We really wanted to play them because we thought our style of play and our physicality and just the mentality of our team would match up really well with them. We were not going to back down. Year before, we were too young. They beat us, and we were at Cameron. But we were looking forward to playing them again. So when we had that opportunity, we were very excited about it. And I did have a good game. And I know Coach K, he's always been just so great with me. And, I talked to him a little after the game, and, he's just, Wojo was out there, and Tommy Amick had just left to Seton Hall. He recruited me up there after they recruited me at Duke. Just everybody on their staff, I got a lot of respect. I got a lot of respect for them. I got a lot of respect for the way they do things, their consistency, the way they win, but also how well their players do at the next level. It just goes to show you. I also love how you look down the bench for that guy, and every single one of his coaches is a player that played for him. I mean, just that's really cool. It's really, really cool. So, it was a big game. But anytime you can beat number one, because that's what you got to do to be number one, it's really fun. I think a lot of Gator people remember that also, because NCAA Tournament was new, and here we are in the Sweet 16 again, and we've got to play literally the worst possible team we could have to play to the fans. So that was a fun night.
Is that true? You played through a rotative cuff injury through that whole NCAA tournament?
Really, basically the whole season. Yeah, basically
Wow.
the whole season. Yeah, it was a box out drill, and we taught boxing out a little different. We did big time help defenders. We loved to trap in the press. We also loved to trap in the half court when somebody else would drive or be in a speed dribble. We would trap them. So it required big rotations, and it required a lot of mismatches on the weak side rebounding. A lot of times me, if I'm guarding somebody up top, and they drive, we rotate, I got to drop. If that person driving who's getting trapped shoots, I got to box out a very big person, usually with a running start on the weak side. So it was basically just like a football block, where my goal was not to get the rebound. It was just to make sure he didn't, like a lead blocker, right? Like a fullback, basically coming in, taking out that main linebacker, and then somebody else can run through. And I was fine. I was strong. I kind of enjoyed it. Usually people weren't ready for it. And so I did that. We were working on a drill, and I think I hit UD pretty hard. He got really mad. And then the next time he came in and I did it, and he jumped right through me and almost ripped my arm off. If I didn't have skin, I'd probably have no arm. Which just goes to show me they were taking it easy on me usually, but or not taking it easy on me, but just not trying to hurt me. They needed me. But yeah, it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. It just ripped. So basically I didn't have my left arm for a long time. I remember one time we were in the dorm room, and I asked Ernest Graham, who was my roommate, to toss me like a soda, and he flips me a can of soda, and it was over my left shoulder. And as it came, I went to lift my hand up, and I couldn't lift my arm, and it just drilled me right in the face. And that's put things in perspective. It's a pretty serious injury. So I ended up getting it fixed at the end of the season. But that was really, really hard. That was really, really hard. And then the next year I had, I think while I was doing physical therapy for that, working hard, I blew a disc in my back. Nobody knew it. I just knew I was having a lot of knee pain. And who thinks? But old people know this. When you have a sciatic or something's wrong in your back, it shoots pain down your leg, and you feel it in your knee. So I was getting all sorts of treatments, tendonitis, stems. I even missed one game for knee pain in the first half of that junior season, until one day I was on the table getting fixed up, and I sneezed, and it hurt real bad. And the guy knew automatically that's really weird. My head was down. I sneezed, and I had surgery the very next day, and they had to take out a bunch of bone fragments because I had waited so long that I was actually in real jeopardy of lost my legs, just because, if one of those things gets wedged into your spinal cord, you're not going to get it out. So it was still in the fluid. They were able to pick out the bone fragments and stuff like that. And I was going to be out, maybe forever. I knew not forever, but the season was over. So I sat out about 4 or 5 games, and we lost them. And all of a sudden, there was a lot of panic. I think Brent Wright had a foot injury. Justin Hamilton had an ACL injury. And it was risk that we were going to have just a god-awful season. And they asked me if I thought I could play, and I was like, absolutely. I feel better than ever. I feel rested. When all the while I was hurting so bad. So I came back from the back surgery. I ended up playing 20 days later against Tennessee. 20 days after career-ending back surgery. And I was in a lot of pain. And so what happens in your back is they shave all the little bone – there's like 100 layers of muscle that cover that up. And they got to shave each one. They can't just like cut in, you know? So all that stuff is real weak. So I started playing before it all healed. And then by the end of the season, it was disgusting because all that little unhealed muscle was popping out. And I had like a little awful tail sticking out of my back of just muscles, like a bullet. And it was just so gross. But I put my body through an awful lot. And that was tricky because nobody knew I was coming back. And then somebody said, oh, yeah, Teddy told people he was going to play. And right after that, they started, coming after me for some other stuff, which I didn't think was a big deal. I just kind of ignored it. And I thought it was going to go away because it wasn't anything, but it didn't. And then media got to get a hold of it, and they sensationalized things. And it's been happening forever. It's not recently with Donald Trump bringing it to light. The media has been doing that for a long, long time. And sometimes the media gets something and sensationalizes it, makes it a big headline. People read it, people talk about it, so they write another one, and they write another one. And the next thing you know, there's pressure on police or attorneys or whoever the heck does that stuff to investigate it. And
they try to ruin people's careers by doing that.
Trying to save face, save face. So, you can always look at the end result to figure out what's going on. But, it's really sad. But that game, which really should be a high point in somebody's career, something that's talked about, turned into I told somebody I was playing. They bet on the game. What am I going to do?
Is that why you feel like you didn't get a shot at, the NBA?
Tough to say that. No, I don't think so. I think I probably didn't play in the NBA because they didn't think I was good enough. Obviously the type of accusations at the time were more serious, but not really. Not really. Even if everything they said was true. Let's say they got, that's not that bad. It's not a big deal. It's an NCAA violation. It's not a rules violation. It's not against the law. Like NCAA, you're not allowed to pay players. You think the NBA is going to not take a kid because somebody paid him and the NCAA deemed him ineligible? Absolutely not. So I would just say I don't think I was probably good enough. Maybe I was. I know I'm better than a lot of guys that were there, but maybe I wasn't good enough with a little baggage. I don't know.
Well, Teddy, what you go back to when you came back from Venezuela playing in the pros. You played in that Louisville game. There was a lot of guys, real good college players in there, and you had a hell of a game. Pitino said that there was no reason you should have been in the NBA. So then what do you say to somebody like that? Rick Pitino, he's coached on the Knicks in the NBA. He coached at Providence, where I'm from. Coached at Louisville. He's coached all over the place, and he's seen great talent. And somebody like that saying that you should be in the NBA, what do you say to somebody like that?
He's got a lot of experience. He's seen a lot of players. I think you'd probably know better than any of us. Too bad he wasn't coaching one of the teams at the time. Yeah, it's tough to say. And there's, I went and then I played in the CBA, which at the time was the second best league in the world. And really a lot because the 9/11 had just happened. So a lot of players that were overseas were kind of scared. And so they were all home. So that league was tremendous. And I went and played in that league, and I had 10 straight games we won. I was CBA Player of the Week my first week, CBA Player of the Month my first month. Had a couple triple-doubles, couple 40-point games. We were 10-0, and we thrust the team into first place, and then I blew out my ACL. And that was hard. That set you back. So that probably had a little bit more to do with it. And no doubt. And then, like I said earlier, when you get hurt and you lose your edge a little bit, you're not as good mentally and physically. So, but then you got to build right back up. There's just no shortcut. So it's just not meant to be for some people. Had I made it all the way through, just smooth sailing, I can't imagine I'd have been here. And I do feel like what I'm doing now is something I'm called to do. It has a very important meaning. I am working with kids, something I can do for the rest of my life, where playing basketball isn't. I'm teaching core group at my church. I'm very involved. I got baptized again in 2016, which was great. Just kind of recommitted my life to God, and I've been accepted there. I do a lot of huge stuff in the community. I do stuff internationally with our mission trips. I do camps all over the country, and now with the shutdown, I've been doing camps and webinars for people all over the world. We have a coaching program, so I'm not just impacting kids directly. I'm impacting kids indirectly by training coaches. But more importantly, we have programs for volunteer coaches. So people at the YMCA, everybody's complaining, the coach doesn't know what they're doing. Well, usually they don't. So we've put together programs specifically for people who are going to volunteer coach, so that kids are getting taught the right thing. So maybe I would have been here. God works like that, but I don't know if I'd have been as humbled and appreciative for what I get to do and carving out my own place in the world. And, so everything happens the way it's supposed to. And I would have, I would have been great. I put a lot of time into getting there, but I didn't. And I just have to think the main reason is I just wasn't good enough,
I have a couple more questions. Teddy Dupay here on Fire Breathing Rob before I get into the basketball camp. Teddy, you played over in Ecuador and Venezuela. Can you speak about that?
In a big way. It was actually quite sad. You don't know poverty if you've been in the United States your whole life. You just don't know. You don't understand. You think you're poor, but there's schools for you and there's housing for you and there's social programs and there's kids eating at school and there's transportation. You go down there, and this was then. So keep in mind, at the time, Chavez had just taken over in Venezuela when I went there, just taken over. And at the time, there were still two parties, essentially your Republicans and your socialists, right? He was big socialist. And so he somehow did something with the election, and all the corruption's still down there, But at one time, it was one of the 5 most beautiful cities in the world. They're still, with the United States, the only country, maybe Brazil, but I don't think so. I think they're missing something in Brazil. Venezuela is the only country, including the United States, that could be completely self-sustaining, energy independent. They have all the resources they could ever need. They have the land mass and stuff like that. They have all the different features. So it really could be the richest country in the world. But he ruined it with socialism. He ruined it, and so there was fights and there was protests and there was all kinds of corruption and all kinds of stuff. And then you look at what Venezuela is now. It's really, really quite sad. And he basically eradicated the conservatives, by force, by imprisonment or by death. He just got rid of anybody who opposed him. And so, by any means necessary.
How were you treated over there, though? Were you treated well?
Like a king. Like a king. Like a king. It's funny, too, because I really stood out. And a lot of kids would call me yellow man. Because most of the people, I didn't look like anybody. I think I might have been the only blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy in the whole entire country. Seriously. Even the team, you're going to love this. The teams were even broken down, similar but different. You'd have, your Venezuelans, and you got different type of Hispanic, but you got guys who are like, they're black. They're Venezuelan, but they're black guys. They're big and they're strong and athletic, and they're playing basketball above the rim. And then every team seemed to have like one light-skinned Hispanic guy who was their token white guy. Oh man, funny stuff. When my dad came down, he laughed. He also he came down to a game and the cheerleaders were wearing thongs and like pasties, doing their dance, wearing panteras. They look like little panthers with no clothes on. He's like,
that's incredible stuff.
It's great. It's great stuff. Are you kidding me? It was so much fun. 20, 21 years old, 22 years old, traveling the world, making a lot of money, playing ball, playing great. And plus, I would have been my senior year of college. So in a way, I'm thinking to myself, I'm just getting ready. This worked out well. I'll show everybody. I wouldn't be getting this kind of professional experience in college right now. So, it was pretty cool. Well, man, Venezuela. But a great place, beautiful everything. Even like the beaches, it wasn't like sandy beaches, it was sand, but it was like a beautiful clay. It was just so comfortable to walk on, like a volcanic type thing. But then you look right over on the mountains, and it was quite sad because years before that they had mudslides, and I want to say either 500,000 people died in their mudslides in Venezuela. It was really sad. And the guy explained to me there's not a single person in Venezuela who didn't lose somebody in those mudslides. Wow. You look and you can still see where the mud came down, and they're like entombed, and you can see school buses, or you see the outline of a house that's hardened mud. Like the landscape of the mountain was things that got overrun by these landslides. And then as it set, you could see like a statue. It was turned to stone. And so that was kind of odd. You're thinking, man, there's people in there right now. But then, all this money goes to government and they don't clean anything up. Mm-hmm. If all this money is supposed to go to the government and this and that, and they're taking everybody's money, they're taking the wealth out of everybody's hands, how come there's no cleanup? How can a place be filthy and still, but it's called.
I've been to the basketball camp. Teddy, can you tell us what got you started with that, and why did you want to do a basketball camp?
Good question. So One of the reasons I was so motivated as a kid is I wanted to go to the NBA, make hundreds of millions of dollars, and then start the Teddy Dupay Basketball Academy, right? Just thought that's what I was going to do the rest of my life. So when I was in high school, I lived with my grandma because I had to move away from my parents. And basically, I lived by myself, but move away from my parents so I could go to this other high school, 45 minutes away. And it was in a public school district, so I had to change my address to a different place. So my grandma came and helped live with me. And so I got real close to her, very, very close to her. And then there at the end, I remember I was working and I was hustling, and entrepreneur. And she's like, still got the same goals? Yeah. And I, tell me again. I told her again. And she's like, you don't need money to do that. And it just hit me. I just didn't look at it that way, Oh. And it just hit me. And I knew, God, I could waste my whole life trying to get rich so I could have a basketball academy when I could just have a basketball academy. And that's about when I started getting to read the Bible a little bit more. And not that rich people can't go to heaven, because they can. It has nothing to do with it. But it's somebody that worships a false god or worships money. I don't want to spend my whole life pursuing that to do that when I can just do that and actually have a real purpose, using my gifts to serve the Lord. And it just, bam, just like that. Well, I can't just change my life immediately. So I started to move towards that. And I remember I talked to Coach Donovan, and he said, look, you could get a job in the pros. Every single team would love you to come teach offense, teach concept, analyze players, do player development, shooting. There's not a team in the league that wouldn't hire you day one. He goes, college might be a little tricky at the end of the day because you had some trouble with the NCAA, and with recruiting, people can pick at you. You start recruiting somebody else can undercut you and make kids think something else. So he goes, that might be a little tricky for you. You'd still be great at it. But he's like, man, you're the all-time leading scorer in the history of Florida basketball history. Probably the greatest high school player to ever play in Florida. And nobody will ever forget you. Then you committed early, and you're basically the godfather of Florida basketball in terms of players are considered, right? And then we won big, He goes, if you could go back and do something on the grassroots where you really helped move the game of basketball forward, not just coaching a team of 12 kids, not helping some university with $1 billion endowment, but really do something that changes people's lives using basketball. And then I'm like thinking to myself, the Teddy Dupay Basketball Academy. So I moved to Tampa, knowing that it's close to Gainesville, close to Fort Myers, but in the middle in a big enough city that could support it. But it wasn't ready. So I worked for a couple of years, and I had a guy here that helped move me into Tampa, and I worked with him. He worked for him for a couple of years, met a lot of important people. And right when I got here, a small nonprofit asked me to be on their board of directors, which I thought, this is great, And so I immediately jumped in. I learned how boards work. I learned how all that stuff works. Then they wanted to start some basketball leagues. They had some going, and I helped and volunteered and helped run them. They wanted to make it better. I did it with them. Then they wanted to do AAU programs. Sure, I know. So I helped on the backside for a year, just helping them get organized, this and that, philosophy, concept, working with the coaches. And then one of the teams that stunk so bad, the coach left. They're like, we can't have a 5th, a 6th, and an 8th grade team. And these guys were the bad news bears. They asked me to coach. So I said, all right. Oh, we got them running, gunning, playing the right play, playing team defense, talking, making layups, going to the middle. And before you knew it, I coached them next year. They were 25-0. Wow. And it was just so cool. We got all these big trophies, and it was so much fun. The thing was, I was going out and working on the weekends. So here I am for an entire summer, not being able to work once. Plus, a lot of these kids, they didn't have any money. So I'm paying for everything when I'm out there. So I'm not making money. Money's going out. And I'm saying, man, this volunteering thing is costing me a fortune. But I wanted to keep doing it. So I figured if I would do it where it cost me money, I could go ahead and leave my job, start the academy. And even if I didn't do anything, heck, I was doing it for free. It was my hobby anyway. That's something I could get my arms around. When you hear successful people talk about how they became successful, it's doing their passion for a living, doing that they do for fun or for free for a living. And so I started the business. I didn't know anything. And little by little, we just kept building it up. And the parents love it. The kids love it. We get great results. I love being out there. And next thing you know, 6 years later, here we are. We've done over 7,500 sessions. We work with over 10,000 kids. I've put over 15,000 hours on the court, which they say it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert in something. I have over 15,000 hours working directly with kids, and most of them are not going to be superstars, but they got to be professional something someday. We've done mega fundraising. We have a nonprofit foundation, as well as a nonprofit fund, the Teddy Dupay for Kids Fund at the Community Foundation in Tampa Bay. And so we just raise money for people, underprivileged kids, or provide opportunities for people who have resources. Kids are kids. They all need help. But more important than anything, we want to provide guidance and help and leadership and protection for people that can't protect themselves. And I think that's really important. And kids are very vulnerable. And typically somebody tells them to do something and they just do it. And kids and people need to think for themselves. And just because you're poor, or just because you're young, or just somebody has control or power over you, doesn't make them right. It doesn't make them right. Telling somebody I got to stay inside my house all the time and we're not allowed to play basketball. We're not allowed to go outside and play basketball because somebody who got a couple thousand votes is in charge now. Doesn't mean they're right. Right and wrong, legal and illegal are two very different things. And we focus on right and wrong. And it's been really well received by 100% of the parents. And the beautiful thing is, if somebody doesn't like it, they don't have to come.
Can you talk lastly, as we end the interview with the last question, Teddy, about what you did in Puerto Rico after the Hurricane Maria? You went down there and helped out. Can you talk to the viewers about that?
Yeah. So funny you say that. So we saw all this stuff happen, and gosh, it was so sad. But I have friends down there, lots of them, and a few people who owned a company down there. And so when I saw that, no electric, terrible recovery. We had sent resources down there. Heck, we even sent people from the U.S. down to fix the lights, and the government bureaucracy wouldn't let them fix it because they couldn't decide whose decision it was.
Right. Yes.
Liberal, So we saw an opportunity to provide something more than humanitarian resources. I know kids. I got a lot of experience with them, and I know they need that encouragement. They need love. They need to play. Kids need to play and have fun. Otherwise, it's this type of stress that they don't know is stress. But sometimes it's permanent. And that's what a lot of these people in charge don't understand. They don't understand people. They definitely don't understand kids. All they're doing is fighting for power, and then they want to fight with somebody who disagrees with them, no matter who the collateral damage is. And it's usually us, the people. Sad. And that's what was happening down there. So we decided we're going to do a couple camps for them, cheer them up, give them some shirts, give them some basketballs. So we decided to start raising some money. We decided to put on a free clinic at the Boys and Girls Club. I went down there and met the different clubs and met the different owners. They were so happy. They needed somebody to come down and give them a jolt. And one kid signed up, 2 kids signed up, 400 kids signed up, 500 kids signed up. And the next thing you know, we had over 1,100 kids. 1,100 kids. And we ended up doing 19 clinics over the course of 4 days for 1,100 kids, totally free. And on the last day, we had a big banquet and a big ceremony. And they had blow-up balloons and blow-up Pop-A-Shot and slides and candy corn and everything you'd find at a carnival. And, the team that was helping me, the MCS Foundation, who's great, big shout-out to them, MCS Foundation, they were helping me with all the administrative stuff. And when they said, what do you want this thing to be like? And I said, I want them to get medals. I want them to walk out of there with prizes. I want them to be filled with soda and popcorn and pretzels. Watch the movie Despicable Me when they're walking out of the carnival. And I said, that's what I want the kids to feel like. And boy, wouldn't you know it, was better than that. I mean, toys and raffles, like when you go get tickets at Chuck E. Cheese, we just give them tickets and they go trade them in for fidget spinners and toys. It was incredible. It was incredible. And then we actually brought some of the kids up here for our camps during the summer. And so I got a little bit of coverage. We ultimately, the Green for Puerto Rico campaign that we did, Basketball Week in Puerto Rico, Green for Puerto Rico, raised over $1.5 million. And we rebuilt several YMCA gyms down there. We rebuilt several Boys and Girls Club gyms down there. And it was a very positive thing. And it's just funny because here we are putting tons and tons of money into Boys and Girls Club and YMCA. And you come up here and you try and get some cooperation from Boys and Girls Club in Tampa. No, $500,000 a year salary for their CEO, and they won't do anything to help programs that don't help kids. Very embarrassing, very embarrassing. So I hate to be negative, but the fact of the matter is there's a lot of corruption. It's not just in the highest levels of government. There's a lot of corruption, a lot of places, and someday it'll get exposed as well. Right now it might seem like, complaining or conspiracy theorist, but that's what a lot of people sounded like when they were talking about the fake news just a few years ago. So it'll all dark, everything dark will come to light. It's all coming to light.
It's coming out. Teddy Dupay, thanks so much. Where can people find more about you and your foundation and also the Basketball Academy?
TeddyDupay.com. TeddyDupay.com. It's pretty easy, but also on YouTube. We have thousands of videos, and then we have a video app, back up on the App Store here, any day now. So, we had that all year last year, got a ton of great response. People were having a hard time finding it because it wasn't associated with our website. So I went ahead and got our developer to build it. And so now that TeddyDupay TeddyDupay.com website, you'll see it. It's tremendous. you type it in, it'll find you.
Teddy, thanks so much for coming on. Greatly appreciate it.